Differences do not make us enemies. I'm going to hope to convince you that's true in the next 15 minutes. You wouldn't know it looking at the media today or looking at a lot of our political dialogue today, because our political dialogue is a lot like this, doesn't it? You can cast that any way you want to, which group is doing which to whom, but that's pretty much how we see it. Our media has gotten angrier, and our politicians have got more paralyzed to try to work together. And if you mention anything on your Facebook feed about Black Lives Matter or GLBT rights or immigration or whatever, explodes in a lot of anger, and no one's listening to each other anymore. Well, I want to give you some hope that we can probably do that a bit differently if we tried hard. That we can have honest differences. And that differences don't have to make us enemies. In fact, differences give us an opportunity for growth. Because all of us form our opinions about what's right and what's wrong and what's best for me or best for our country from our lives, from our traditions, from our backgrounds. And then we try to impose that on other people in a way whose experiences are not the same as ours. They've come to different conclusions than we have. If we'll open up and talk a little bit, we might just find there's a better way to do it than we've been doing it. The polarization I'm talking about is not just something that we might see on our Facebook feeds or see in the media. Pew Research has done some research on the polarization of the American Republic lately. Started in 1994. If you look where the median Democrat and the median Republican is, fairly close together. There's a shot we could get some stuff done, work together. We're not that spread out. 2004, it begins to spread just a little, ever so slightly. But look what happens in 2014. From this to this. This doesn't even include the election of 2016, the nomination of Donald Trump, the work of the Russians to work against us even more. This is before all that. They'll measure again in 2024 to see how far we've gotten. We've actually gotten where the median Democrat is now to the left of 91% of Republicans. And we got the median Republican to the right of 94% of Democrats. We actually believe, this is 2014 again, 44% of politically engaged Democrats actually see the Republicans as a threat to the nation's well-being. The same is true for the Republicans, a little more, 51%. In other words, we're not even having discussions anymore. We're not even trying to find what I'm going to describe to you as the common ground. I'm not offering a new idea today. I'm going to offer you an idea as old as the Democratic Republic. The hope that we could form a more perfect union based on people from a variety of nationalities, traditions, coming together and try to make something better. But to do that, we're going to have to think differently. Because we almost all think with conflict. Now, I've got a friend, he's a golf pro. And he was young, needed to make some money on the golf course, wasn't doing enough lessons. He would put a ball down on the ground in the driving range. He'd get ready to hit it like this, and he'd say to the guy next to him, I can hit this ball over 100 yards without taking a backswing. The guy would look at him and say, what are you talking about? Yeah, I'm not going to take a backswing. I'm just going to hit the ball from here. It's going to go over 100 yards. I'll bet you $50. The guy said, you're not going to pull it back at all. Not going to pull it back at all. I'm going to start right here. And they took the bet. And all he would do is just flip his hands over like this and go forward this way, all the way around, and he'd hit it 100 yards plus. Just by thinking differently. We get trapped in ways of thinking that turn out to be pretty negative for us. And we're pretty much done that now in the Republic, where we can't find ways to work together. Well, I've been spending 25 years helping various groups find ways to work together, despite our deepest differences. And I'll tell you, I think this is the hard work of a republic. I think if we're going to be a nation that goes forward and tries to find hope and tries to find answers to some of our most pressing problems, we've got to have a different sort of conversations. The things that influence our conversation, no one probably decided 25 years ago, let's be more polarized. But money that's come into politics and businesses that want to influence legislation because one line in a bill can save one company billions of dollars that their competitor doesn't get. We saw that with EpiPen shots and other things where we look at the government as a purveyor of benefits and we try to get ourselves in a position to get as much of the benefits as we can get for ourselves. Money has come into it and clouded our judgment. The lust for political power, Republican, Democrat, whatever. It's now not a nation where we're working together for a common good, but if our president isn't in power, then the Congress becomes obstructionist, the competing party in the Congress. Tries to obstruct, so we don't have the opportunity to talk about the things that matter. The other things that affect this is just media ratings, Facebook ratings, views on YouTube. The things that seem to solicit people's engagement are people that are angry and hostile and feed this dialogue that we are two separate people. Our media now has two separate outlets, two separate stories for anything. There's alternative facts, and we don't even have a common story to agree on anymore. When I was younger, back in my earlier days, the media at least had a common story. Oh, people interpreted the facts differently, but we didn't have a different set of facts. Now we do, because one group's talking to one group. Why? Because the ratings matter. It's how much money can be driven. Anger, hostility toward other groups seems to work in that environment. Now, can we turn that around? I got a phone call a number of years ago from a woman in Iowa. She's school board president in a large city. She said, Wayne, I've got a lot of people in my district. They're asking me to call you and invite you to come out here. She said, we're trying to pass a new anti-harassment, anti-discrimination, anti-bullying policy. And we've got some real pushback in our community. She said, I've got a group of people that have voted. The school board's ready to vote on it tomorrow night, 5-4. But we've got an angry community that doesn't think we've done it justice, and they're concerned that some of their things aren't going to be served. And she said, so why would I invite you out here? I said, well, it seems to me if you want to pass an anti-harassment, anti-discrimination, anti-bullying policy, you don't want to do it 5-4, you want to do it 9-0. And she said, you can guarantee that? And I said, well, I can't guarantee it. I don't know your community yet. But if we can't, it'll be one of the first districts I've been to where we couldn't. At least if we get 8-1, 7-2, we're better than 5-4, because 5-4 decisions change the next time you have a school board election. And we really don't deal with the underlying causes of that harassment and bullying and discrimination. We've got to have buy-in from the whole community. And I said, what's more, I come guaranteed. If I can't get you to 7-2, you don't pay me. She said, really? And I said, yeah, because I think we can do it. And so she said, well, why don't you come out then? Do you need the school board together? And I said, no, you guys have already talked about it. Why don't you form a committee from the community? People from both sides of the issues, people who are vocal about it in the community, people who are ready to sit down and have a conversation. What would a common ground anti-harassment, anti-discrimination policy look like? So they did. I asked for a group of 20. They got me 30. So we had a bunch. And it was 15 people on one side of the room on most issues, 15 people on the other side of the room on most issues. And when I come into the room, they're just certain I'm the 16th vote in the room. And they're all trying to persuade me so that I'll be able to persuade the others of how we can get to this common good or common ground. When I start a meeting like this, we've got people of all different kinds in the room. And we're going to now talk about all kinds of different political persuasions, all kinds of different agendas. And my first line to a room like this is, we're done tonight when 90% of us agree on a solution. And that gets a laugh because people, yeah, not with those people across the table. Not with those people. We've been at odds in the letters to the editor in the paper. We've been at odds at school board meetings. How are we going to reach common ground with them? And then we begin a different kind of discussion. See, when I'm with a group of people for a couple of days, as I was in this city in Iowa, I don't change people's opinions. What I try to do is change the conversation. It's like that golf swing I did a few minutes ago. It's not the way we would normally do it. Okay, let's have it all out. Here's the stuff that's in the room. Now let's fight for what we're going to get. And that's what we've learned in our political engagement, that the loudest voices, or sometimes the most obnoxious voices in the room, get their way. What we try to do is change the conversation, and we do it this way. Two things. The first is we review our civic compact. What it is that makes us a country. And yeah, our original documents are a little bit flawed. I like what they say, but they didn't apply it well. When you've got things about equal justice under the law, and you've got language about creating a more perfect union, and you've got language like all men are created equal, and at the time they did only mean men, but they didn't mean all men. What they meant was white, Anglo-Saxon, male, Protestant landowners. That's what they meant. But we've had a history in our nation of trying to expand that ideal to an ever-growing group of people, to get everybody involved at the table, to have a more perfect union because we're all represented there. Our concerns, our ideas, and our ideals. The problem is that means somebody's got to give up power. If you're expanding the reach of the table, those who had the table to themselves resist that kind of change because it's complicated for them. But if we can buy into the ideal that government doesn't exist to bring benefits to some of us, government exists to be the arbiter of a common good. It's not just what I want versus what you want. It's what's best and what's fair for all of us. If we did traffic laws on what was best for me, all my lights would turn green today and I would get wherever I want to go and you'd just be out of luck. But if the traffic laws are meant to protect us all, and so all of us have an equal shot of navigating through the traffic patterns to get where we want to go, now we understand government better. Our parties have given up the idea of a common good and a national interest. It's now party interest. They're not even willing to fix some of the situations that most confront us today, those issues. Like immigration, we can't even talk about it anymore because one side will talk about undocumented workers and the other side is going to talk about illegal immigrants. And now we've got terminology that we can't even sit down at a table and say we've got to fix this. In the last election, we were given two options: open borders and amnesty for all, or a wall and deport them all. There's 1,000 possibilities in between. If reasonable people could sit down at a table and say, we've got a problem, and how do we fix it, and not worry about the political implications or worry about the income that's derived from people who enjoy the fight. So I went out to this community, and I sat down with them one evening, and I talked about our civic compact. And while we're talking about it, and this basically is people cannot be asked to participate in a society that's biased against themselves. That always gets me buy-in. Everybody around the table can agree with that statement. It's not fair for me to take control of society for my good and put you at risk. It's got to be. People cannot be asked to participate in that society if it's biased against them. The second thing that happens as we get to know each other and we talk about our civic compact is that people get to meet each other and they hear the other stories that we're not hearing because we mostly spend time with our tribe, people who think like we think and act like we act. When people sit around a table and find out their stereotype of the other side doesn't apply to those people, when they realize I don't have the right to ask for this school district to give me one thing more than I'm willing to give to that parent and their child in this school district, and people start to look out for each other, then we discover this: you best protect your civil rights when you are protecting the rights of those who disagree with you. That's where power comes in this kind of dialogue. And I've watched groups do it, where one side is making points for the other side because they want them to be as comfortable. We want to find a solution that we can have buy-in to. And I know that sounds like a pipe dream. Most people I try and tell about, they go, I've never seen it happen. The reason I guarantee my fee when I go to some place like this is because I've never not been paid. I've never got a room full of reasonable Americans, no matter how passionate they are about the issue, if they're willing to share the environment and not hog it for themselves. We've never not reached an agreement. Well, except for once. And this I wasn't paid for to be there as a mediator, but I was with a group of scientists, creationist groups, the ACLU, and science teachers. Could we get intelligent design in the public school classroom without being sued by the ACLU? And right toward the end of the day, we're almost to an agreement. We're as close as we could be in Nashville. And all of a sudden, the creationist groups become recalcitrant. They start asking for things they didn't even come to the room with, but they were intentionally trying to sabotage the agreement. So I went to lunch with a couple of them, and I said, what just happened in there? We're this close to reaching the agreement you all came here hoping to get. And now you're sabotaging it. And one man said to me, well, to be honest with you? I said, yeah. He said, there's 25 organizations that make their income off this fight. If we solve it in Nashville today, then you're going to put 250, 350 people out of work. Do you want to do that? And I said, as a matter of fact, I do. I'd love to put those people out of work, but they didn't. We do common ground negotiations. We don't let advocates be in the room. We don't let people who make money from the fight in the room because they're not really interested in solving it. They're interested in keeping the conflict running. That's why there's so many unresolved issues in our national dialogue for so long, because people won't ask the question, given our differences, what's the fairest thing we can construct together? It's not compromise. It's working toward a better consensus where people walk out of the room. In Iowa that night, we voted out the policy that we were going to offer the community, 29-1. We rewrote the entire policy, voted out 29-1, and the one vote said to me after the meeting, listen, I voted against it. I actually like it. I promised my church I'd vote against it, so I did, which is kind of cheap, right? Everyone else voted for it. As they walked out of the room, some of the conservatives in the room who'd really asked for this meeting said, Wayne, thank you for coming. This is such a better policy than the one they were going to pass. And the school board president said to me as I went to my car, Wayne, this is not only a better policy than the one we were going to pass, this has stronger protections for our students and our staff than we had before. That's the hard work of a democracy. It's not getting my way. It's finding out what's the best way for us all to work together. If we're going to be equal, if we want equal justice under the law, if we want to share this amazing thing, then let's find a way to share it. Here's how I'll help you do it. We're not going to change Washington here. This TED speech is not going to change Washington. Washington is so embedded in its money and quest for power, but we can start in our communities. So I'd give you these things to think about. One, respect those who think differently. Lower the rhetoric. Ask people on your Facebook page to lower it. If not, take them out. I don't mean literally take them out. I mean take them off your feed. You don't have to leave every stupid comment on your feed. You can actually delete it. Encourage a great commitment. Say to someone who disagrees with you, I'd like to hear more about what you think. What are your concerns right now? Why do you see this differently than I do? And I mean an honest chance to listen and learn. Not to argue and make your points how wrong they are. What we mostly find in these meetings is, and I could ask the room right now, how many of you ever been in a political discussion and felt like you were being misunderstood? Your point of view was being stereotyped in a way you didn't agree with. Most of you, I'm saying most of you raise hands. Me too, that's the best part of this. We start listening to each other. We find out how distorted the media is and our politicians in keeping us divided on some of the most controversial issues of our day. If we'll listen to other people's concerns or ideas, we have a chance to grow, not go to war. So we look beyond now what's best for me and people who think like me to what's fair for us all. And that will expand the conversation in a way that gives us a hope of reaching some solutions on these issues. And then wherever you can, there are new groups now trying to help build the common ground. When you ever hear that term or you hear people talking about bridging the divide, find out who they are, what they're doing, and if it's, because there's a lot more people now that are sick and tired of the political rhetoric and dialogue we have, and hope in this administration and this time we're in, my hope is this is the high watermark of the animosity in our national dialogue. And that there is some hope that we can offer better solutions and better opportunities for the kinds of conversations that will actually generate progress and make us that more perfect union. And then maybe we'll have a lot less of this and at least a little more of that. Thank you.